Okay, I think we will get going then. So welcome to this final Tableau Prep user group of the year. Thank you for joining us today. You'll see I'm joined by Michael, Tom and Anya, but we're just going to go through a few housekeeping bits before we get going with their presentations. So a little bit about myself. For those of you that join the session regularly, you will have heard this all before. So I'm sorry for that, but in case we have any new joiners today, I am a data school consultant at the Information Lab in London. So I've been using Tableau and Tableau Prep for over 2 years now. And I sort of started the Tableau Prep user group earlier this year to sort of give Tableau Prep a little bit more of its own space within the Tableau sphere, because a lot of user groups I'd attended before tend to focus a lot on Tableau Desktop and sometimes Tableau Server, but it's not that often you get people specifically showcasing Tableau Prep. So we set this up as a platform to do that. So I use Tableau Prep in my day-to-day job, which I think is a great tool, and it's gonna grow and grow. It already has done a lot this year, as you'll hear from Tom later on. But one of the other things that I've used Tableau Prep for in the past is for prepping data, and I just wanted to highlight this because I think we often get quite a lot of beginners joining these sessions, and it's a really great way to start out with Tableau Prep because it offers loads of different challenges for you to get involved in that will help build your understanding of the tool and data prep in general, that you might not necessarily come across in the problems you're trying to solve in your day-to-day job. So I think Tom has just dropped a link to Prepping Data in the chat box, so you'll be able to have a look at it there. But essentially it's a community-run scheme by Tom and Carl and Jenny, who are previous speakers on this session. They put out a new challenge each week, which you can then go and solve, and then a solution will be posted the following week. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I know Michael is going to speak about his journey with prepping data, but just one for you all to be aware of. On to some Tableau Prep training. Again, some resources for you to go out there and start developing yourselves and learning a little bit more about prep. There's some official Tableau webinars and training sessions that are being developed for January. So I've been told there is going to be one on the 19th. They haven't yet set up the registration page or the official details for that, but I believe that's coming this week. So in the subsequent emails after this session, I'll make sure to include that in there for you guys. Then also just something to note is there's also some free training from the Information Lab. There are some sessions called Thursday training at 3. So these run every Thursday at 3 o'clock GMT. So maybe earlier in the morning for some of you joining from the US. They're 2-hour sessions, and we set up these learning paths so you can build on the previous sessions. So we have a Tableau Prep learning path, which consists of 3 sessions. So there's a beginner, then an intermediate and advanced. So you get 6 hours of Tableau Prep training for free. And the next learning path is starting on the 14th of January. So there's a link that you can sign up to. I think that's probably gone in the chat as well, but we can also send that out with the email. Something to note with that one as well, I think, given that the session is over a month away, you might not be able to sign up for it yet, but that will go live shortly. And then just a final piece from me. Going into next year, we're actually going to start the process of launching a Tableau Prep newsletter to sort of accompany these sessions. So this is likely going to include like useful blogs and learning resources to keep up your development with Tableau Prep, maybe some links to some training sessions that are upcoming like I've just shared, or maybe links to prepping data challenges. But it would be interesting to hear from everyone on this call and previous attendees of the user group. It will go out to them as well, as to if you were to receive something like this, what would you want included in it? How regularly would you want it? Would you want it sort of once a month, every 2 months, sort of in line with the user group session? So it would just be good to hear. And then also with that survey, there's just some feedback on the sessions in general. So going into next year, we have a bit more of an understanding of what people want to hear about specifically in these sessions. It is a Google form. I know some people may have trouble accessing that through corporate machines, but I think that was going to be an issue with whichever platform I went for. So hopefully you'll be able to access that. So moving on to the presentations, we've got Anya, who's going to be talking about geocoding in Prep. Michael's going to be talking about his journey with prepping data. And then Tom is going to be recapping 2020 with Tableau Prep, as there have been so many new features released this year. So he's going to give a bit of an overview about that. For those of you that haven't joined one of these sessions before, each of the speakers will present for roughly 15 to 20 minutes, and then there will be a small Q&A with them afterwards. The Q&A will come from questions that you all submit as attendees. So if you could make sure that you submit those into the Q&A part of the Zoom call, that would be great. Don't put them in the chat, because I won't be looking in the chat to answer the questions. We obviously won't be able to get through every question that gets asked. Sorry, we will hopefully get through everyone that gets answered. But if we can't get to your question, we will try our best to answer it through the Q&A box. Someone will try to type a written answer to you. We'll try to get through all of them. And then final thing to note is that this session will be recorded. So if you have to drop off for any reason, you'll be able to catch up on Tableau's YouTube channel. So not to worry about that. Okay, enough from me. We'll move on to the sessions now. So Anya, if you would like to present and take over, that would be great.
Thank you for the introduction, Jack. So let me start sharing my screen. And thank you for the invitation. It's really nice to present on the Tableau Prep topic and show how you can extend the Tableau Prep functionality with some of the developer tools. So again, welcome, and good time of the day, whichever part of the ocean you are on. My name is Anya Prosvetova, and I'm one of the members of the Information Lab, also the data school, similar to Jack and Tom. And I'm one of the Tableau DataDev developers for this year. And today I'm going to talk about how you can geocode your actual geographical locations using the script step and the Python in Tableau Prep. So that's something you can do outside of the standard functionality in Tableau Prep. So first, what's geocoding in general, not only in Tableau Prep? Geocoding is the process when you convert the actual physical address or a part of the address. For example, I'm going to look at how to convert the postal codes into the latitude and longitude pairs, so you can use them further in your geographical analysis. And for the session today, I'm going to use the postcodes IO API, and we're going to look at how to connect to this API in Tableau Prep and how to convert your postcodes using this API. And I'm going to share also some of the other APIs you can use to do that at the end of this session. So first of all, before we start looking at how to connect to APIs, I just want to remind to everyone what is an API, because maybe you have worked with APIs before, but that's going to be just a quick refresher. So API stands for Application Programming Interface, and in short, it just allows two pieces of software to communicate with each other. So imagine you have an application. It can be an application on your phone or an application on your machine, on your laptop. So you can send a request from one of these applications, And that can be a request that's called get. So you are just asking for certain information, for certain data, or you can post a request that's called post. So that's you send in data to another software to get something in response. You can also delete some of the data in another application by using API. So once you send this request, it goes through the API and directly to the server that's connecting your application through the API, that's connected to your application, via the API. Once the server gets your response, it processes it and sends the response back. And response comes frequently in two different formats. It can be either JSON or it can be an XML file. So what are the difference? So data formats, when we're working with APIs, can be either XML, that's extensible markup language, or it can be JSON, JavaScript object notation. And today we're going to look at how to work with the response that comes in the form of JSON. And on the right side here, on the screen, you can see a sample of such response that we're going to look at also later today. And you can see that JSON files are quite easy to work with because they have the same structure, whatever API you are connecting to. They have a structure of a name and value pairs. For example, in this script, in this part of the response on the right, you can see that eastings, for example, is a name in our JSON response, and the value is highlighted in this blue color. That's the actual value for the easting. And so this is just showing you an answer for this particular postcode, OX495NU. But as many postcodes you will have exactly the same structure in the response. So you will have all these different name responses, postcode, quality, eastings, and so on and so forth. And then you will have the corresponding values for each of this name category. And I hope that this gives you a little bit of an understanding what APIs do. If it sounds a little bit abstract, just think about APIs you actually use every day without even thinking about it. Every time you need to, for example, pay with PayPal account, you don't need to go and connect to your PayPal account separately. That can be done using the API that's embedded in the online shop that you're using to pay with your PayPal account. Again, weather app on your phone, you can check the weather in your location without thinking about that you are sending a request to the server that gets the weather forecast specifically for your location. You just go to the app and check the weather for your town or city. So that's how APIs are used in everyday life. And so let's see how we can use them in Tableau Prep. So how to connect to an API using Tableau Prep? To do so, we need just 3 parts. So first, we would need to create a Python script. So for this session, I'm looking at how to connect using Python, but you can also, just want to mention here, you can also use R language to connect to APIs. So in this session, I'm going to focus on Python. So for that, I'm going to write my Python script. Then this Python script is going to outline the logic of my actions. So which API I want to connect, what kind of request I'm going to send, and what response I'm going to get, and how I want to output it. So we will have a look at my script I'm using for the session in a second. Once you have the script, you need to set up and start running a framework that's called TabPy server. And this framework was designed to allow your Tableau desktop or Tableau Prep in this case to talk to a Python script that you can use that can extend the functionality of Tableau Prep in this case, but it also can be used in Tableau desktop. So once you have these 2 parts, you can bring together them in the script step in your Tableau Prep workflow that will point to the Python script that you wrote, and then that also be connecting to your Tableau TabPy server. So that will come together in your script step in Tableau Prep flow, and then your script will run and you will get the result you expect, hopefully. So that's how we can very vaguely outline this process. And as I mentioned earlier, in this exercise, we are going to look at how to geocode data. So I'm going to look at how to geocode UK postcodes, turn them into lat and long pairs using the postcodes IO API. And I'm going to share all these links after the session. And I guess, Jack, you might also include this in the email that's sent after the session as well. So before we start doing the practical demo, I just want to outline all these steps that we need to take to connect to the API and convert our postcodes. So first, whichever API you're going to use, you need to read the API documentation to understand how the API is structured, how you can query it, what are you getting as a response, and how you can work with this response. Step number 2, once we understand what the API is doing and how we can work with it, we can then send our request. We can form our URL, that's going to be our request, and then we can see how we can structure it based on the documentation. Once we have that, then we're ready to write our Python script that, as I mentioned earlier, will outline our logic, the logic of our function, what we would like to do with the data from the API. And then we need to install and launch the TabPy server, this framework I mentioned earlier. Once we have all these steps done, we need to move to step number 5 and connect our Tableau Prep and TabPy server. So Tableau Prep understands that TabPy server we're using is running and is all in place. And then the last step, step number 6, is finally then we can add the script step in our Tableau Prep flow, make sure that we point to the function that we need to use in our Python script, and then everything should run and we will get the response, the output that we are expecting. So this looks a little bit maybe intimidating. Don't worry, we're going to go through all these steps together in a second. And I just want to mention that my Python script is available already on my, from my GitHub repository. So we see the address here, and I will share the address after session as well, so you can access this script and use it in your project as well. So first, let's have a look at the step number 1. So let's read the API's documentation. So let me open the website for the API. So this is the website for the postcodes IO API, and I used it for this session because it's quite an easy to use API, and it doesn't require any passwords or any API keys or any kind of other security fixes. It's very easy for this kind of demo, but there are other APIs that allows you to geocode your data, but they frequently allow need to have some passwords or some API access keys. So just check the ones you would like to use, or what's the requirements there. This one is quite straightforward. And for example, what we want to do, we want to bulk geocode different postcodes. So I have a list of UK postcodes that I want to convert into latitude and longitude. So if I scroll a little bit further down on the website to look at the documentation for this API, I see that there is an option, exactly what I'm looking for. It says bulk lookup postcodes. And it tells me that I need to form my URL with the post command. So I'm sending the list of postcodes to the server to geocode this. And then I need to say api.postcodes.io. That's the main URL of the API, and then /postcodes. So I'm telling what I'm sending. I'm telling the server what I'm actually sending. And that's how it should be structured. You can see at the bottom in this window, the form, how you should structure this request. So it should say postcodes and then the list of these postcodes with the quotation marks and the comma separated as well. And what's good about this API, for example, you can actually click request and see how your response will come back, what kind of shape it will have. So as I mentioned, we're going to work with the JSON format here, and you can all see how we're getting the response back, what parts of this response are coming back, and maybe we don't, in our case, we don't need all these details. We just want to focus on the latitude and longitude parts. Okay, so that's covering actually step number 1 and 2. We read the API documentation and we understand how to structure our URL. So that's first. Let's go to step number 3, which is going to write our Python script. And I have already prepared my script for the session. I'm not going to go into very much details here. I just want to mention a couple of main points that we need to cover here. So first, we need to start, as with any other Python script, if you're familiar with them, we need to start with importing the libraries that we're going to use. So first, we're importing the library that's called requests. That's the library that you use to connect to APIs in Python. Then we're going to import JSON library that allows you to work with JSON files and parse them. And then the pandas library is a great library to work with the pandas data frame, so the tabular data. And that's important for when you're working with the Tableau Prep and Python, because Tableau Prep understands only the pandas data frames. So whichever function you're going to write, whatever logic you're going to use, you always need to make sure that you have the output of this logic as a pandas data frame. Otherwise, Tableau Prep won't understand the format you're trying to bring into the software. So that's the first thing. And then once we import all these libraries, so you can see that we are now forming our URL. So we're saying this is our base. The postcode lookup endpoint is going to be just our postcodes. Then we're actually forming it in the line number 13. And then I'm also specifying here that in line 15 and 16 that I want to get my output in JSON. As far as I remember, this API can bring you also response in TXT file or CSV, but I want specifically to bring it back as JSON because I want to get just a part of this response. I don't want to work with the whole thing. So once I set all these conditions at the beginning, then I'm writing my function that's called bulk geocode by postcode. Remember this name because we're going to use it later in Tableau Prep. So that's my function that's going to form the request, take all my postcodes from my data that's connected to Tableau Prep, form them in the list that as it should be sent to the API, send the request, get the response in JSON format, then format it in the way that I can use it and take out just latitude and longitude. And then you can see if I scroll a little bit further, that's going to be my final output that I'm getting just this geocodes, a variable that will have the list of all my postcode, longitude, and latitude values for the list of postcodes that I will send. And then the last bit I want to highlight in this code. So once my function is done, my main function is done, I will see that you can see that there is another function that's called getOutputSchema. And this is the function that is standard for when you are connecting Tableau Prep and Python. And that's just to form how your table that will come into Tableau Prep as a response of after you processed the API response in Python, how it will be formed. So in my case, you can see that I'm saying that I will have 3 different columns: postcode, which is going to be as a string; longitude, that's going to be prep decimal, so that's a decimal or float number; latitude, again, it's going to be decimal, so it's going to be a float number. So it's a number with some digits after decimal points. So I'm setting how my columns are going to look, to be called like, and then the data type for each of these columns. So that will be my pandas data frame that Tableau Prep will take in and output in the flow, and you can see how it will look like in a second. So that's how my Python script is structured. So we have that. Let's go on to the step number 4, when we're going to install and launch the TabPy server. But before we move on, I just want to show you that there is quite a good article on Tableau website where you can see how you can use your Python scripts in Tableau Prep Flow. And if I scroll just further down, you can see all these different data types and how you should refer to them in your Python scripts are outlined there. So have a look at this article. It's quite a good introduction to this process. So we have that, we have the Python script. As I said, let's go and now look at TabPy server. So I have already installed TabPy server on my computer. You can go on to TabPy server official documentation, which is on GitHub. Again, I will share the links later in the session. You can see how you can install it here, how you can run it on your local machine or on dedicated server, and all other frequently asked questions are answered here as well. And as you can see, it's a publicly open repository, so you can, if you find something, if you want to improve something, you can always contribute to that. And installing TabPy is very, very easy. You can just put the command pip install TabPy if you're using the command line, and that will install it on your machine. So that's what I did earlier before the session. And just to let you know, so I am using Python, which is already installed on my machine. Then I installed TabPy again on my local machine. I'm not using any dedicated server for that. And I'm using the latest version of Tableau Prep, but the connection with Python works in early versions as well, so you don't have to have the most recent version. And also the last bit I want to mention here before I actually start using it, I also have the Anaconda installed, which is an environment which allows you to work with Python libraries and packages in a much easier way. But also what it provides you with the Anaconda prompt. So if I start looking on my computer, yes, I have this Anaconda prompt, which is just Anaconda version of the command line. Let me just make it a little bit bigger so you can see. So first, I need to start my TabPy server. So I have it installed. Let's now start it. And it's very easy. You just type in TabPy, press enter. And then you can see that at the end, I get the response telling me that the web service listening on port 9004. So that's the signal for you, telling you that it's all good, it's all installed, and it's all running. So you can actually use now TabPy, connect to it in your Tableau Prep, and then use the script step. So let's do exactly that. So let me open my Tableau Prep builder. And you can see that I already have my data here in input. So first, let me show you. I have a very simple table here, just with the fire station names and then the station postcode. And what I did, because this, I have a little bit longer list here for all the fire stations in London. But what I did here, I just filtered it to have only first 50 stations available, because the API accepts only 50 entries per request. So I can geocode only 50 postcodes in one request. So that's why I filtered this list only to show the first 50 entries. So that's good. That's my data. That's what we're going to work with. And then now let's connect to our TabPy server. Let's tell Tableau Prep what to do. So to do that, I need to go to, I need to go to Help, then Settings and Performance, and then Managed Analytics Extensions Connection. So I click there. And here, as I mentioned earlier, you can connect to, you can use the R scripts as well. So for that, you will need to connect to rserve. In our case, TabPy is our selection here. So TabPy server, I selected. You see that because I'm running the server on my local machine, I just keep this localhost as the name of the server and then the port as 9004 that we saw earlier in this success message. If you have a username and password for the server you are running TabPy on, obviously you need to input it here. So I don't need to add anything here. I just press sign in. Okay, we don't see anything now happening here, but let's add our script step. So let me add my script. And first we need to say what's the connection type. So in my case, we have the TabPy. Okay, nothing happens again. Fine. Now we need to navigate. Now we need to point to the file that we're going to use, the Python script that we're going to use here. So I click Browse, and then I have my geocoding stations. Fine. Nothing happens yet. So the last bit here we want to add is the function name. And that's the function I was saying earlier about. That's the function that I have in my code. Let me scroll back up. That's the function that I'm outlining my logic in. So in my case, it's bulk geocode by postcode. So let me just copy this name. And I just put this in the function name. So that should be fine. Let me just click somewhere else. And you see my script started working. Let me just make it displayed as detail. And you can see now my table is presented as postcode, longitude, and latitude pairs. So we converted our postcodes into these pairs, and now we can use them further either in Tableau Prep or in Tableau Desktop. And as you know that I'm sure Tom is going to talk about it later in the session, that in sometime next year we're going to have spatial calculations coming into Tableau Prep. So that will be quite a nice addition to how you can turn your actual physical addresses in Tableau Prep and then use maybe some of the spatial calculations such as make line or make point or distance to find this geolocation features for your data. So that's how you can use Python in your Tableau Prep flow. And the last bit I want to show you here before I give you some useful links as well, if I go back to my Anaconda prompt, you can see actually that you can use it to debug your code. So that will be a little bit long, but yes, that's the start of my code. So you remember that we connected to the API. We had to the server, sorry, we had our success response. Then this is my code actually represented here. And then I added some notes in my code. So it's printed once the code is executed. So let me just find them. Yes, here we go. So we have our original list of postcode here visible. So you can take step by step through this response and understand how your code was performed. So we can see that we get the request formed with our postcodes. So you see it's in the same format as API wanted it. Then we can see that we get the response from the API, and that's quite important. We get the response that's 200. So that means that we connected to the API. It's all good. We're ready to go. We can send the response request and get the response back. Then this is our response from the API, and that's what was taking so much space. You can see this all different parts of this response, the eastings, northings, admin counting, so on and so forth. So let me just scroll a little bit further down. You see it's quite a long one, but you know, we don't need all this. We just need latitude and longitude. And that's what our formatted list of postcodes and lat long values here displaying. And then this is nicely formatted as a data frame from the response. And that's the data frame that we're going then to feed to Tableau Prep. And we saw that it's coming out nicely and in the format we wanted. So that's how you can use also the Anaconda prompt. If you add all these notes in your code, you can see how it's going from one step to another and understand if something doesn't work, what doesn't work at which stage. So quite a useful option here as well. And let me just go back to my presentation to show you a couple of things that you can also use. So I use the postcodes API just because, as I said, it's open and it doesn't require any password or key. But there are other ones like Google Maps API or OpenCage API or GeoPy that includes actually several geocoding services that you can use in Python to geocode your data. You can geocode, meaning turn your addresses into lat and long, but you can do a reverse geocoding as well by turning lat and long pairs into actual physical addresses. So you can use all of these APIs to do that. And also last bits, I just wanted to share some of the links or to videos or some articles that you can use to learn more about how to integrate Tableau Prep and Python. So I would suggest looking at this article I shared earlier about using Python scripts in Tableau Prep. It's quite a good starting point. go ahead and read the TabPy documentation to understand better how it works. There is a list of public APIs that you can use as well. I would highly recommend watching the Jack Ferris videos on TabPy and Tableau Prep Conductor. That gives you a next step development of this process. And then I would encourage you to join the Tableau developer program. That's a part of the community of the overall Tableau community that's focused on extending the functionalities of software, Tableau Desktop or Tableau Prep, and will give you more resources to learn about these things. And also want to invite you to my little Tableau DataDev happy hour. That's just an hourly session that runs every month. And if you are interested in learning more about Tableau developer tools or how to extend Tableau Desktop, Tableau Prep, how to use all these different languages, I would be happy to see you there. You don't have to stay for the whole hour. It's just a relaxed session where people can drop in and ask any questions they have about developer tools. And then the last bit, if you do have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me via the Twitter. I'm Analytica, and then also via my blog, where I also share some articles about different developer tools and how to use them in Tableau Desktop or Tableau Prep as well. So that's everything from me for today. Thank you very much. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Cool. Thank you so much, Anya. That's a really interesting presentation and really good use case for using the scripting tool. I think it's come at a good time, this talk, given that the spatial functions are going to be coming into Tableau Prep next year. I think this will be really beneficial for a lot of people. There are a few questions. We won't be able to get through all of them, but perhaps afterwards you can dive into the Q&A and pick some up yourself. So the first one's probably quite a quick one. Does the postcodes.io API, is that just for UK postcodes or is that worldwide?
Yeah, this one is just for UK. That's what I was saying. Just because it's open and it's easy to go through this during the session, I went for this. But say if you go, for example, for Google Maps API, that's worldwide, so you can use any addresses or any Latin long and convert it.
Okay, cool, thank you. And yeah, for anyone interested in following this up, Anya listed a load of APIs you can go and check out in the presentation, and all of these resources will be shared with you after the session. So don't worry about having to write everything down now. So this is an interesting one. When an API limits the number of responses, how would you go about this, overcoming this issue?
That's exactly what I had in this case, because for some reason, I think maybe they updated the API, but they haven't updated the documentation. On the documentation, you see that it says that it accepts up to 100 values in postcodes, for example, if you want to convert in bulk. When I was building the workflow and script and testing it out, turns out that it accepts only up to 50. So that's why I filtered my list to have only 50 values here and then converted them. So I guess if you have more, then you just will split this in several branches, convert every branch. So if you have, say, I have, I think, a little bit more than 100 here. So I would have a couple of branches and then just join them, or union rather than back, to have the overall list. Yeah. Okay,
cool. Sounds like a reasonable solution in this case.
The only thing you can do, other one, if you don't want to have all these different branches, you can write your script so it takes the output and then sends another request. But I think that might be a little bit more complex. The easiest solution is just have several branches. Yeah,
can understand that. And then a question from John is that, do you need to leave the lat longs as numbers or change them as text, because you won't be aggregating them and they're technically discrete? But how would you deal with these to plot them on a map?
I think you can't. You need to keep them as numbers, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, but also if, say, for example, I have this little table and I output it, when I bring it, for example, into Tableau Desktop, I will be able to assign the geographical roles to these fields, lat and long.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that will be.
That's right. And I think if you're using the make point function in Tableau Desktop, you want them as numbers.
Yeah.
It's not going to work if you convert those to strings.
Yeah.
And then we'll go with one more. So once after you've got the initial setup, do you need to have that TabPy server running in the background when you refresh the workflow?
Yeah, so if you have at least one script, you need to have this connection. Otherwise, it will just error because Tableau Prep will not understand which, it won't have this framework to connect to Python, to use Python in its workflow. So that's why I was saying that at the moment for this exercise, I'm using it on local version on my local machine. So I have to manually start it and run from the command line. But you can also install it on TabPy. You can also install it on a separate dedicated server where it can run all the time. So say if you have workflows on your server, on Tableau server that you need to refresh and you are using some scripts there, then again, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but you need to use Tableau Prep conductor to run this flows, to schedule the flows and run them, but you also need the TabPy server running all the time for that.
Yeah. And in the video that Anya mentioned about TabPy and Tableau Prep Conductor, which I made, I give an example of how you can set up a virtual server on AWS, and you could install TabPy on that, and then you could just have that as a dedicated server running in the background. So it doesn't matter if your local machine is turned off or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Anya. That's really great presentation.
Thank you. Great questions.
They weren't from me, they're from the attendees. So we will move on to Michael. So Michael, if you'd like to take control and present your screen, you can get going.
All right, let's get this live here. So, where's my stereo? There we go. Earlier on today, Jack mentioned Preppin Data, and I am talking about my journey and what I've learned over the past 2 years working through the Preppin Data challenges. Quickly about me, just to give you a little bit of background, I have 8 years experience doing data analytics with my current employer, including 3 years Tableau, 2 years Tableau Prep, and a very long time being an Excel wrangler, which preparing data was one of my worst nightmares in Excel. So much manual copy paste tables. As far as technical skills, I've got a background in psychology, so minimal formal training in information management, IT systems, information sciences. I like to consider myself a member of the Let Me Google That university. I know just enough about this stuff. Anya, you did a great job presenting all that. I was lost. I don't know anything about the coding there, but thank you for what you shared. But I have completed 100% of the Preppin Data challenges as of were released yesterday. What is Preppin Data? Well, it's the website. Jack shared the link earlier. As it's described on there, a weekly challenge to help you learn how to prepare data and use Tableau Prep. It's run by Carl, Jenny, John, and our next speaker, Tom. And it is a way to quickly gain an applied understanding of Tableau Prep and really about data preparation techniques in general. Challenges usually post on Wednesday with a solution the following week. Solutions come in the format of text and pictures, and starting in 2020, there have been videos that walk you through as well. These are great for people that learn in different styles. Also on the website is a series of how-tos that provides really solid explanations of prep, the features, and data preparation concepts in general. As I said, I have learned so much of this through prepping data, no formal training. And yes, as a note, this is not a sponsored talk. None of the Preppin Data team has seen this presentation before I put it together. This is all based on what I've done. Why do I do Preppin Data? Well, it shows there are several ways to find a solution. The solutions that they provide give you the logic and the why. It's not just a, here's a process, go cookie cutter. I've heard a lot of people who have learned coding just cookie cutter and don't really understand what they're doing. Preppin Data gives you that background on why. It lets you practice, especially with unfamiliar data sets, that speeds your learning process along. And because it's not an actual open project that you are working on, you have the way to validate that what you did actually worked out right, rather than trying to work and work and work. Low risk. It really helps us push the boundaries of what you can do with Tableau Prep. There are a number of challenges where it's like, that seems really impractical, but I had no idea you could do that. For example, working through a logic puzzle or doing a cipher. It's a good way to learn new features. When a new feature is released, it's likely going to be part of a challenge within a month. I don't know how far ahead they stay, but I have noticed the pattern of if Prep releases a new feature, it comes out within a month, and I struggle with the challenge because I don't upgrade very fast just because of IT security. And Preppin Data really has been instrumental in developing my approach to data preparation. So in my preparation cycle, I work on knowing the purpose, profiling the data, determining the preferred state, how do you want this to be, planning the necessary changes, putting those changes into action, previewing the results, preserving the logic, and then publishing the data. Going into these a little bit further, purpose, know your applicable business rules. There are going to be times that the data should be in a certain format, certain files. Are you going to clean the data, combine the data, or make a calculation with the data? How are we going to apply what we need to do? Is this workflow a one-off thing or a recurring? The answer to that may impact how you choose to work through the workflow. What is your analyst going to need, or what should they not have? The granularity, what level of detail? Do they need months? Do they need days? Do they have the processing power on their computer to work with days or minutes, hours, if you have that level of detail? And also security, like I said, what should they have? What shouldn't they have? One of the things that I have been able to do use case at work is stripping out information that the analysts weren't supposed to have from confidential files. Most of these questions are answered for you in the purpose when you're working through the prepping data challenges, but learning to read through the patterns there helps you understand what to ask for when you are working on another project. Profiling the data. Determine what is available for the input, look for distributions, data types that may suggest there are entry errors or areas that need cleaning, check for row level identifiers, unique ideas, duplicates, things that you can work with and use in restructuring the data. Do a preliminary identification of anything that is nulls, especially if the entire column is null. Identify your preferred site. Prepping data saves you the work on this step as the desired output is given to you. But how we can use that there is relating that output back to the analytic purpose, what we talked about at the beginning, what are we trying to go through with our workflow. Plan how to use the data. A template with the key actions that you're going to go through when doing Preppin Data is provided. It doesn't always give you all the answers, but there are definitely hints on what you should be looking forward to do. At other times when you're working on a project with code, consider what exists in both states. So that starting state, your inputs, and what you would prefer it to be in. What needs to be added or removed going between those two? Are there columns and rows? That should be rows or columns. Really consider the computer consuming the data versus a human looking at it. A human can look at a table going left and right, like, hey, this all makes sense. The computer, not so much. Are there derivatives that you need to be calculated? We'll get an example of that later. And what level of detail, as I mentioned earlier, years, days, months is one that I work with a lot. Site level things versus aggregate data. Working through the Preppin Data challenges in 2019, most often I used aggregate. That's summing or counting within the column, joining, bringing extra information together. using calculations, a lot of if statements, splitting data out into different parts, pivoting the data, that's the rows and columns. Date calculations are just special calculations used with dates. And an honorable mention for 2020, because I have been learning a lot more about it using regex or regular expressions. Still learning, but still super powerful. Basically what that is it looks for a pattern in a string text and helps you, you can decipher from that, you can strip things out, find things, match things, use true, false, put the data into practice. Begin making the changes that you need. Don't be discouraged if at this point in the process, it seems like it's taken you a while to get here to actually getting into the flow. Really at this point, if I go through the preliminary steps, I'm about 75% of the way through. Just diving in and not taking the time to plan. I've tried this with some challenges. It usually takes me about 2 to 3 amounts of time to come up with what I need to do if I don't take the step back and actually look at it. Preview your data. This step is generally not necessary when doing prepping data as an output for comparison, but when you're working on a more open-end project, take the time to preview what your analyst is going to see. There's a way you can right-click and open in Tableau. It'll give you, if you have the desktop version, it will give you the output on where you are. You can see if you still need to do calculations or if you have meaningless variables. Sometimes when you're doing the joins and such, you get a duplicate field or you have a field that has nothing in it for whatever reason. If those things come up, go back, keep cleaning in your flow. Preserve the data. Although Prep captures the steps that you use, it doesn't explain why. Document, make notes. What are your decisions? What is the logic for the future? Always assume you're going to need to hand off the workflow. Your next user will be grateful for your notes. And even if you don't think you're going to hand it off, your future self will thank you, especially if you used trial and error or did some iterations to get something to work as intended. As an example of that, as I mentioned, regex, I keep referring back to my notes from week 30, 2019, or hey, this is why this worked. And save your file. I feel like that's just a real basic thing, but I have learned the hard way. Yeah, you need to do that. Publish your data, follow your business rules, create an outfit so your analyst, if that's not you, can access the data. As a quick use case to give you an example of how we go through this process, going to look at the most recent Preppin Data. No, I won't go into all the details, so you can still have the challenge of working through it on your own, but this is just a high-level view of how I solved it. What we were doing was creating a data set for the analyst to mimic the style of a data viz using NBA data. So one-off run, so we may be able to take shortcuts and hard code manually change something if we get stuck. Our purpose is to clean the data, make it useful, so we may need some calculations, and at the end of our output, we need the game number, the team, their cumulative innings, rank at that specific game. Profiling data. Here's a look at our input sheet. Just quickly looking, we have date, the time that started, a team, their score, a team, their score, a column that really doesn't look like it means anything since it's got repeated the same value, a column of nulls, attendance, and then a column of notes. Going through there, like I said, okay, we don't really need the start. We don't need these last columns on the right. The 5 that we really need to put as our input, the date, the team, their points, the team, their points. And I am going to switch over to Tableau Prep so we can look at our viewer there. When we get here, as I said, continuing to profile the data, is there anything that needs to be cleaned? I've kept those 5 columns. Okay, dates, that looks like a typical distribution of the team. We've got 30 teams home, 30 teams away, so we know we have all the teams. Quickly looking at the number here, they all look relatively the same, so we have everybody played every game. The points distributions look relatively similar to what I would expect from an NBA game. So we shouldn't really need to do too much cleaning here. And switch back to the PowerPoint. Again, with our requirements. This is why I said our plan, the key points are done for you on prepping data, but learning how to go through these and the types of thinking has been immensely helpful to me. Inputting the data from that. Okay, so we are going to union all the tabs. So we're going to stack all our information together. Determine who won. We can do that with a calculation comparing the scores. Work out the order of the team's games. That is a rank function that comes within Tableau Prep. Work out the cumulative wins after each game in the season. So we're going to be doing a sum at some point. I would think a running sum would give us the total at the end of the season. It's going to require a little bit of restructuring to get to that. So we're going to need a pivot in there because I've got our teams in 2 columns, not just 1. Comparing the rank. Interesting twist. I'll leave it at that and not too much, not give away too much, but I was able to solve that with ranks and calculations and outputting the data. Putting that into practice. So I will flip back to the flow real fast. Putting that into practice. Determining our winner. To do that, I typed in a calculation comparing the points. I said, okay, who's our winner? And of course, my computer chooses to go slow. There we go. Did the home team win? Did the visitor win? Now we've got that data, so we need to restructure and get our two columns together, our points together based on our score. We pivot them. We no longer need the points, so we got rid of those. Now we just had a series of calculations to go through identifying home team. If they won, we gave them 1, 0. If we did not, that lets us calculate our wins and scores. Created a copy of the data set for a self-join. That's just part of the running sum technique. I used a different color to help me identify in the next set where each thing came from. You can edit color by right-clicking on the table. Did a join for the running sum. Little bit of cleanup. Did the sum. Went through a couple ranks, and as you can see, looking at the flow, I know it's very small font there, but on each one of these, I have a note of the purpose of the steps and then our final output. And it looks like my computer is hanging on Tableau Prep, so I will just go back to the presentation. Preserve. This is an example of what I was talking about with saving the data and the notes for your future self. When you are writing a calculation, you can type in a / and then type in anything you want. It will record it as text and not interrupt it into the notes, much like adding notes. Explaining that this first part does this, the second part does this, why we have a -1 there, because that was a little tick that needed to be done to make the adjustment to make everything work as expected. Publishing it, created the outstep, saved the file. Let's see if we have any more questions before I look at details. Does not look like anything specifically related to what I was asking. So again, kind of a detail slide here. Again, this site, Preppin Data, has been amazing, has been quite educational and really helped me along to make sure that I am doing things right. If you're looking for help, the Tableau Prep community online, I'm sure as part of the user group, you are here, you recognize that there are lots of people out there. The forums are great about getting a response. I have a lot of luck getting help on Twitter. I know I have gotten answers from all kinds of corners of the universe. Also would recommend specifically following. I'm not going to try to pronounce his username because I would butcher it. I'm sorry, but he is on Twitter and does the Preppin Data challenges in R and Python. So Preppin Data is not explicitly about prep. It is about preparing data, even though there is a focus on prep. And also a plug for the book Tableau Prep Up and Running, written by Carl, who is one of the people that runs the Preppin Data. I got a copy. It is much, much more detailed and actually very practical. Fairly quick read, I found. Got through the whole thing in just a couple days. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have unmuted myself. There are some questions, Michael. Thank you for that presentation. I think it's really nice to see almost like a proper prepping data journey almost there, because that is exactly why, like stories like you and the examples you've set out is exactly why I know Carl and Jonathan initially started the project, and why Jenny and Tom are now involved. And I think it's really nice to see how you set out your way of tackling each challenge, because that's, even if people don't go from here and onto Tableau Prep, I hope from here they go into Tableau Prep, onto Prepping Data. I think it's a great way as to how you should really solve any sort of data prep challenge, whether that is something like prepping data or it's a problem you might have in your day job. So I think that's a really beneficial session for everyone.
So I use that technique all the time myself now in my day job. Things that took me weeks to solve. Now, solving in Excel was a lot of copy paste. A lot of copy paste. Things that would take weeks now take hours. Prepping Data and Prep has been amazing.
That's good.
I'm sure you guys all know that being here.
Yeah, certainly. And that's definitely how I started out with Tableau Prep. And I think as well, it will throw up situations that you won't have come across before. And through working through it and looking at other people's solutions and the community, you can learn from that. And then one day it will come up at work and you'll know exactly what to do to solve it. And you won't spend hours looking through it. So just off the back of that, Michael, what advice would you give someone who's really starting off on their Tableau Prep journey and thinking about starting with prepping data or elsewhere, from someone that's been there and done it?
Starting off at the very, very beginning, the videos are helpful in learning the techniques, but really where I got the value from Preppin Data is learning to apply those techniques. I will admit the first month or so that I was completing the challenges, it was wait till the solution comes out and read it and, oh, that makes sense. Then go back a couple weeks later and try it again myself. So that has been instrumental in learning different ways of using it. And like I said, the new features, like, oh, I didn't know that feature came out.
Yeah, there's constantly new features coming through. And as we will see from Tom, who I think is going to attempt to recap them. I mean, something you might want to offer a bit of advice on here, Michael, which is not, I mean, it's a difficult question and it's not one that is going to be a straight answer, but a lot of people talking about prep lagging or hanging and stuff like that. We all know that prep can at times be quite buggy, I would say. But
we saw it in my presentation there.
It's something we know that the devs are working really hard on to iron out those issues, but as you're going to get with developing a tool quickly, there are always going to be some issues in there. But when you do come across that like hang time or lag, what do you typically do to try and get around that? I mean, people have offered solutions such as like sampling or
I've tried sampling. When I need the whole data set, I will save where I am in the flow and restart. Sometimes that helps clear the hang. I would love more RAM. Trying to run this on a laptop is challenging, we will say.
Yeah, I think that's the same for many people. Okay, great. Thank you, Michael. Just before we move on to Tom, there is something that comes up a fair few times in questions, and it's about getting Tableau Prep to mimic the relationship model in Tableau Desktop. People are asking it in the questions, so I feel like I might as well address it. Tableau Prep is not going to have the functionality to make a relationship, because what you're doing with relationships in Tableau Desktop is the relationship is so that it's built upon, there's a logical layer in Tableau Desktop now and a physical layer. And the physical layer is where you will be making joins and unions as you always used to in Tableau Desktop. And that the reason it's called the physical layer is because you do make a new table of those joined or union tables together. So you have a whole new table there. When you go into the logical layer and form a relationship, you're basically telling Tableau how two tables can interact or should interact based off different fields. But that relationship is never sort of permanently there, if you would. So that only gets brought into play depending on what you have put in the view in Tableau. So as much as you set up a relationship between two tables, you never actually recreate a new table, because it's going to depend on the level of detail that you bring into the view as to how Tableau decides to aggregate those two tables. So in Tableau Prep, you're always working in what would be the physical layer in Tableau Desktop. So you're only ever going to be joining or unioning two tables together. So that's not a functionality of Tableau Prep. It's not going to become one, because you would never have really a solid output from a relationship. If you'd built a view and you've then got a table, like say you built a table in Tableau Desktop in a worksheet, of course, then you've got some kind of visible output of two tables coming together, but that data source never actually exists really in the physical world as one table that you can output. It completely depends on what you have on the view. So that is my answer to that question. Hopefully that made sense. But it keeps coming up whether there's going to be relationships in Tableau Prep. So I thought I'd clarify. Okay. Do any of you, Anya, Michael, Tom, want to add to that?
No, that was actually very good. I finally, I think, understood it in very nice, simple words, how it works.
Well, that's what I was going for. So hopefully I haven't left people more confused. Great. Let's move on to Tom then. So,
perfect. Okay.
Tom, summarize the year for us.
Thank you. I've got the joy of summarizing 2020, which I'm sure we've all enjoyed a lot. But for Tableau Prep, it's actually been quite good. So let me share my screen. So let's go. Okay, so Tableau Prep in 2020, just before I'm Tom Prowse. If you want to connect with me, I am on Twitter, LinkedIn. Please do ask me questions, connect with me, give me some Preppin Data ideas if you want. More than happy to talk through anything with you. So just a little bit about me, just like Jack and Anya, I am also a data school consultant at the Information Lab. I started in April 2019, so I've been about kind of just over 18 months, and I'd never been using Tableau or Tableau Prep before, so I was a complete newbie. And my Tableau Prep journey also started in a similar way to Michael's with Preppin Data. So that's how I started to learn prep. I was doing the challenges every week. I was lucky enough to be working with Carl and Jonathan, who were the founders. And then I also started to become one of the team as well, which was probably about a year ago now, maybe kind of a year and a couple of months. So I normally focus on the solutions. So hopefully I've been helping a few people out with the written solutions. But yeah, it's been great to hear Michael's story, especially because that's exactly the reason why we do it, is to help people learn and especially with all the new features coming out, that's like the main reason is to help people to get comfortable with prep and to work through different data sets. Just in general, other kind of non-data things is, in my life, I just love sports. That's kind of, so if you see any Preppin Data ones from which are sport based, they're normally mine or Carl's if it's NBA. And then Tableau as well. I do love a sports viz. So 2020 in Tableau Prep, it has been a busy year. So there have been 11 new releases. So it's pretty much one a month. So that's incredible for different kind of software releases. Within those releases, there's been over 25 new features. I think that's probably been a few more as well. But that's means that we've been busy in Preppin Data as well. So covering all of these features, doing the challenges, doing the how-to posts. We've actually done over 150 or 153 blog posts this year, and there'll be a few more before the end of the year as well, I'm sure. So the new features, as I said, there's been quite a lot of them. So these are the majority, I think, they should be kind of appearing now. I've probably missed some, but as you can see, we've got everything from kind of the inputs to outputs to different things, different functionalities within calculations, converting dates. And yeah, there's been so many improvements and so many reasons why all the developers have just made our lives so much easier with different things and different functionalities within Tableau Prep. Because at the end of the day, I feel like this is why I use Prep, is to make my life easier, to make me understand my data better, and just to be able to, make things a lot easier for when other people use it as well. So let's take a look at some of the new features in 2020. So first up is my data connection here. You can see if I just zoom in, I am connected to my Tableau server. So I think it was 2020.2, we could connect to our Tableau server data sources. So if I click on here, you'll see connected to my server. We've got in the settings, we've got incremental refreshes as well, which was also a new feature. I'm not going to cover that today, but that's another tick from our feature list. And then finally, we also have this here, which is the dotted line. So this has made it really easy for new users in Tableau Prep to pick up the tool and, okay, what do I do? Oh, nice and easy. I click here, I can view my data, I can get started. So as this just loads here, I've got quite a few fields. I've gone on to Google Trends, so provided by Google. So I think it's the Google News. They provide a report of daily trends, which I focused on the UK here. So as you can see, this is from the 18th of March. This is the top trending cities, and then we've got top trending kind of pieces of news or searches within Google. Now for each day, we have two columns. So this is the 18th. Then we've got moving on the 19th, 20th, and so on. Now I also have this for, if I just also have this for July and September as well. So my first one is March to June. My second one here is July to September. So normally I would probably, it's probably structured in the same way. I would want to maybe group these, combine them somehow, maybe union, but I don't want to stack these tables on top of each other because they're all different days. So let's just clean this first one first. So I'm going to bring into a pivot. And now I'm not sure this is a new feature for 2020, but it's a great feature in Prep, which I really like. So we've got a wildcard search. So I'm not going to be going in and bringing every city day for about kind of, what was it, 200 days or 100 days or so. So I can click on the wildcard. Within my first values, I can type city. Now it's going to pick up every field where city is in the field name. I can press enter. Now all of my cities are just there. Super easy, super simple. And that's why I love Prep. And now I want to bring in my trends. So I can press the plus here. Do exactly the same with the wildcard. And then write trending. Press enter. And now that's put all of my fields in. So now we can just rename these quickly. So this is my date field, my city, and my trend. So then if I just press have a new clean step, now you can see we've got the date, my city, and my trend. So it looks like there's some nulls. So I'm just going to click on null and exclude. So now I've just got a list of my cities. And now using this little histogram on the side here, it looks like I've got one value there, which has got a lot more kind of rows of data than there should be, or compared to the rest. So let's go and investigate that by clicking on there and then scrolling a little bit. Oh, look, I've got lots of NAs as well. So let me just go and click and exclude those. Notice how we've got lots of kind of similar rows of data now. So this looks about right. Now, I've got a few things here as well. Maybe I want to make my date an actual date. So it looks like they've got city follows all of my dates. So we can press the 3 little dots. We can clean and remove all of the letters. So we do that. This just removes our city field. And now using the data types, we can just go and change this and be a date. So there we go. That's my table, my first table clean. If I just create a new step. So we've got my date field, my city field, and my trend. Perfect. So now what I want to do is go and repeat this, but for July. So that's fine. I can go and do the pivot again, do all the cleaning, but I can also use a new feature within Tableau Prep, which I think it was in the latest one, just to make it nice and clean and make it nice and easy. I can group. Oh, actually, wait, it's grayed out and I've got an eye. So this is actually another feature. So it's a 2-in-1. So if your Tableau server is on a different version to your Tableau Prep on your desktop, so I've got the latest version here, where maybe my server's in an older version, it will give you a little warning. So it's detected that they're different. So you don't have to go through the whole workflow, upload it to your server, and then realize, we're on the wrong version, which I've done plenty of times. I know, especially within Tableau Prep and Tableau Desktop, it's really annoying. So we can actually overwrite this for now, because I'm not actually going to be uploading to my Tableau server. So if we use features and notice this is now grouped, those 3 fields, group them together, made it nice and simple, made it nice and clean, so we can hand over to kind of make our workflows a bit cleaner. So now if I want to use this group within the next one, or within a different workflow, I can save this group of steps. So then they become reusable steps. So I can either do it publish to my server or publish to a file. So I'm just going to do a file for now. I'm just going to call this prep steps. See, I've got a few different ones there as well. So I've saved that. And now within my July to September, I can insert a flow. Find this in my my file explorer, press open. And now this has added these steps in. So it's grouped it already. So it makes it nice and clean. Got both of our groups. And automatically it's done those steps already. So again, this is making it so much easier. We're not repeating every single time if we've got lots of data. So now we are ready to union. So I can drag union the files. So this is stacked my March to June and July to September on top of each other. I can then, sorry, I think I've put in the wrong steps. So I've got trending and trend. So it would help if I choose the right steps from my file explorer. But now we've got our table names, we can remove those, and we've got one data source for both of our workflows. So another new feature now, which is really, really useful, is converting dates. So my date field, I've got convert dates. So this was released, I think, in 2020.1. So as a new user, maybe sometimes you're not too sure on the kind of the syntax of doing date calculations, and maybe you just want to bring out, I don't know, the month of from your date field. So let me just go and duplicate this field quickly, just so that we can compare dates. So I've got 2 date fields exactly the same. On my second date field just here, I'm going to use the 3 dots, convert dates, and then month number. So with just a couple clicks, I now have the month number for each of my dates. Notice this is all the ones for March. for April, and so on. So that's great, really simple. Basically what's happening here, if I double click on the changes pane, is Tableau is just writing this calculation for you, which we would have to go and open a calculation, new calculation, and do this. So again, it's just time saving and making it super simple for everyone. Now, another feature, which I've just go back to my duplicated date field. If we click on the 3 dots and convert dates, we've also got custom fiscal year. Now, in businesses, in reality, hardly anyone's kind of financial year starts in the 1st of January. So there's always those hard calculations to try and get your head around, okay, let's shift a few dates up and then realign, and you always get really confused, and it's kind of half an hour's gone, half a day's gone, and you're still not there. So this time we have custom fiscal year. So you can click on this button. This then opens the dialog box, so you can choose how to convert your dates. So we can do, let's say, a week number, and then we can choose when our fiscal year starts. So if we choose March, for example, so this is when our data starts, choose March, convert our dates. We now have the week number for each of our dates, but starting in March, so it's shifted our financial year. So for example, we've got the 18th here, 18th of March is the 4th week. So looking at my calendar, if I go back to March, it always starts on the 1st of the month. So this is a Sunday, so week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. There we go, perfect. Really simple, really easy, and really quick. So let me just rename that so we're nice and clear. So that's my fiscal week. So moving on now, I'm just going to quickly do an aggregate. So what my overall goal here is to aggregate all of my trends up per week. So I'm just going to use an aggregate tool to bring in my trending field. So each of our individual trends, our fiscal week, so for each week, and we're going to sum the number of rows. So that's basically counting how many trends happened within that week. So I'm just going to change that to trend count and open up a new step. So I've got my count of trends, my fiscal week, and then the trend itself. So for example, if I click on Airbnb, you can see this was trended once in week 22, once in week 25, and once in week 27. Whereas if I click, I don't know, up here, Birmingham coronavirus trended 5 times in week 29. So this is great, but maybe I want to find out kind of how many times, I don't know, COVID test trended over all weeks. Now, previously, before this was released, you would have to use kind of different techniques within Tableau, which would be either aggregates and joins and self-joins. It would be a bit confusing. So because the normal calculations work on a row level, you couldn't do any kind of calculations which went down or fields or across different fields and things like that. So this is where analytical calculations come in. So if you're familiar with LEDs within Tableau Desktop, this is what they have brought into Tableau Prep. The biggest difference with LEDs in Tableau Prep are they are so much more visual, and I think so much better. So in Tableau Desktop, you have to type out the squiggly brackets and the colon, the colon, and then get confused what goes where. With Tableau Prep, we've got a visual calculation editor. So if I choose fixed LED, this opens up our calculation editor. So it's nice and visual, and it helps us along our way. So we've got 2 sections. We've got the compute using. So this is the sum, the aggregation part of the LED. So we've got, these are all of the aggregations that we can use. We're going to use the sum. So this is basically saying sum up all of our trend count. So this number now is 6,290. So if we just jump back to before the aggregation and go over to the left, that's the number of rows that we had before. So we know that's working correctly. So instead of doing the whole sum across the whole data set for all of the trends, we want to break it up for each of the individual trends. So we're going to use the trending. Wait for this to load. And now we get the nice kind of visual representation. We get the box plot to show the spread. And let me just change this total trend count. Press done. We now have all of our individual calculations here. So each row, the total for all of them is 3. So now we can start using those row level calculations like we normally would to help do things like percent of total. So let me just do that. So percent of total, I want my trend count divided by my total trend count. Let's times that by 100 just to make it nice and simple and for us to look at. Wrap this in some brackets and maybe let's round it to do 2 decimal places as well. Okay, so my percent of total, I've rounded it. So if I press save now, notice how we have, let me just move this up. So now Switzerland coronavirus occurred twice in week 27, but 6 times overall. So it happened 33.33% of the time on that week. So that's great, but notice how it's still kind of hard to see how they're related, the different trends. So it'd be really good to be able to rank them and then put them in some sort of order. So again, this is another analytical calculation where we go down, create calculation, and we've got the rank as well. This is the same kind of setup with the visual calculation editor, but you'll notice instead of kind of the aggregation here, we have the rank instead. So we want to rank our percent of total, great. We want to group by our trending. So for each trend, we want to create a rank. And then we also, so this is just ranked in our kind of percent of total, but we can also add like a second layer to our rank. So we press the plus, we want to rank via fiscal week. So we can add the second layer in, we can change it from ascending to descending. So if we go down here, I just press done. So our population of the UK, okay, they're all the percentages were the same, but now our fiscal week has ordered nicely. I'll tell you what, let me just, if I, my trend, if it's only happened once, I'm just going to remove it for now, just so we can see it nice and easy. So if I just scroll down, let's see how it's ranked it all nicely for us and made it nice and simple. For example, daily coronavirus cases, it's ranked the percentage first, and then if the rank is the same, we've ranked it by fiscal week. So that's made our data set nice and simple, nice and clear. So it's time to now output our data. So one of the big things now for Tableau Prep is you can output to a database. But first, there's one kind of victim of 2020 is you can no longer go to a TDE. So we've only got hyperfiles now. Or CSVs. We have lost that. I think it was in the kind of 2020.3, so the latest version. We've had a casualty of TDE, but I'm sure Hyper is much better and does exactly the same as a TDE instead. So let's go for a database table. So this actually shows us to write out to a database. So we can select our server. So we've got a list of servers which we can output to. So I've connected to a Postgres here, which I'm already connected to. So it's got my connection there already. I can click on that. I can go through, I just need to select the table. So I've got one for Google Trends, let's say there. And then I've got a few options to create a table, append data to the table, or replace data. So if I choose replace data, it gives me a little warning just to make sure I know what I'm doing. And I'm not going to kind of overwrite any data on the database, but that's fine. But then we've also got this nice kind of visual aspect of the mappings between which fields are going where. So notice how we've got the 3 fields here, which named correctly, named the same, they're all going to be going fine, match up perfectly. But then notice how I've slightly changed a few of my my wordings in my my workflow. So I may want to go back and rename trending to trend, or trend total counts to trend total count, and so on, just so they match up nice and as we were expecting. So this nice visual gives you the nice sense check just before you pressing run your flow. For now, I'm just going to create a new table. So going back onto my table just here. So if I'm going to do prep tag, notice how we've got the option to create a new table as well. So we can click here. This is just going to create a brand new table in my database. I can run my flow. Wait for this to be completed. Press done, and then we've got the brand new table all created. So that was a quick whistle-stop tour of some of the new features within Prep. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of them, so I haven't been able to cover all of them, but there are, hopefully we'll cover most of them in Preppin Data. As Michael mentioned before, we do try and get all of the new versions or the new releases out fairly quickly so we can get practicing them, and if we've got any questions we can report back and things like that. So yeah, thank you very much. As I said before, if you've got any questions for me off this chat, then I'm happy to connect with you via Twitter, LinkedIn, and make sure you start doing Preppin Data as well. I want to see a lot of new people and new faces submitting challenges. So yeah, back to you, Jack.
Thanks, Tom. I think it's amazing that you just managed to cover off so many features in such a short space of time. It also makes you realize how many new features they've brought out this year, because quite a few of them I was sort of thinking they came out last year or even earlier than that.
Yeah, hopefully we've still got a release maybe by the end of the year as well.
Maybe.
I'm not sure when 2020.4 is coming out, but yeah, I was hoping it wasn't going to be before or today, maybe drop today, then I would have had to redo all of my presentation.
Update.
But so
we'll
yeah,
see what Father Christmas brings everyone. So one question from Lauren is going back to the fiscal year option. Is there a way to change the start of the week instead of using the beginning of the week always being Sunday or Monday, like your desktop?
Yeah, not for fiscal dates at the moment. It always starts at the first of the given month that you've chosen. So I'm not sure if it's going to be built into a few of the new releases, but at the moment you can only start on the first of the month from whatever month you've given. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, like with all these things, they bring out the first feature and then they get developed over time and improved.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the 2020.1, it was converting dates, and then a couple of versions later they went convert fiscal dates. So it is growing all the time. So who knows, this time next year we may have that feature as well.
Yeah. And then so recapping all those features, what's your favorite feature that has been brought out this year or most useful?
I think it's got to be the analytical calculations, LEDs and ranks. I think it's just opened up and made it so much easier to do these sorts of calculations. I mean, when I've been learning them in desktop, if I'm honest, I never really understood what they actually meant. The structure of them, what you're grouping by, but seeing this visually within Tableau Prep makes it so much easier and so much easier to understand, especially as a new user. And I feel like this is what Prep is perfect for. If new users coming to Data Prep for the first time, I don't know, not really knowing what's going on, and Prep just helps you along the way so much better. So yeah, definitely the analytical calculations with the visual calculation editor, and then just the little features of making your life a bit easier, like the warnings to tell you you're on the wrong version compared to your server, which would have saved me so much time if that happens in desktop as well, which would be nice.
Yeah, I think I especially with the analytical calcs, I'd agree. When I first saw that come out, my initial thought was this is just going to make people understand LODs so much more easily. Just being able to see that being computed visually just makes so much more sense to everyone, I think. And then
Personally,
finally,
I have
go on,
kind of a
Michael, sorry.
conflicting view there with you, Jack.
Oh.
While I love the addition of the LOD feature, having to do the workarounds back early on, trying to figure out how to do those, really made me understand what we were doing with the LOD.
Yeah, that's very true. So yeah, that's especially if you go back to some of the earlier Preppin Data challenges, there's a few kind of workarounds for rankings and things like that. Probably the solutions, because the kind of analytical calculations went out. So definitely agree with you there, Michael. It kind of gives you the, I don't know, behind the scenes kind of view, should we say, of what's actually going on.
Yeah. And then finally, what is on your Tableau Prep Christmas list for next year?
Oh, so I think the biggest one is kind of spatial as well. What that's going to look like, I'm excited to see. Yeah, I think that's going to open up a lot of things. Another one from the kind of Tableau conference was the Einstein predictions as well, because obviously we've come together with Salesforce now. Using Einstein analytics, it seems super powerful. So combining that with kind of how easy Tableau Prep is and to do things like that, it's going to be really interesting. I'm excited.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of new things coming our way, which will be really exciting. And if you haven't seen some of those new features which are coming to Tableau Prep next year, you should definitely recap some of the dev sessions from TC-ish to see what's coming next year, because there's some really exciting new stuff. Cool. I think we will wrap things up there, running slightly over, but that's fine. So thank you, Anya, Tom, and Michael. So yeah, with that, thank you for joining, everyone. I hope you have a great Christmas. We will be back in the new year. I think the next session is probably going to be late January, early February. And we're actually doing a collaboration user group with Data Plus Women. So that's really exciting to kick off the new year. If you want to connect with me, there are my details, and all the resources and presentations from the speakers today will be shared with you over email, as well as those earlier links like the sign up to the training sessions, the surveys, and all that. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Anya, Michael, and Tom. And I will see you soon.